more ado, I'm going to pass it over to Robert Harris, the board member of UltraVest, who helps us organize this wonderful event.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're doing well tonight. A couple of things that I'd like to say, and then I'm going to share a couple of stories with you. So first of all, a little bit about me. My name is Robert Harris. I serve on the board of UltraVest. I was previously the CEO or executive director for a couple of years. And Susan Dunn, who's just over there in the corner, many of you know, and I've worked quite closely together for quite a while. Susan is the executive director of UltraVest, and she can take care of additional information about what we do. But in a nutshell, UltraVest specializes in governance training, specifically in the not-for-profit and charitable sector. So our whole mandate is about building the capacity of boards and helping all of our charities around the GTA in particular perform at the highest level we possibly can. And there's a few ways we do this. We work directly with people like yourselves to help to match them with charitable boards. We also produce materials to help people get some general grounding in governance. We also have programs where we work directly with charitable boards. The name of that program is Board Leadership Development. And the idea there is to have those experienced people that have been engaged with UltraVest for a number of years in a training capacity and also a governance capacity to share best practices with charities around Toronto. And finally, we also have our Board Match Leaders program, 2 days of intensive training in not-for-profit governance service. And this is a very dynamic program, and it helps to expose folks who've had very little experience in the leadership area of being a director, gives them a little bit of background and insight. So that is a little bit about UltraVest and what we do, and as the evening rolls on, we'd be happy to share some more information. So that's the theme I'd like to touch on a little bit tonight, is governance as leadership. When you think of yourself joining a charitable board, you are certainly putting yourself out there as someone who's going to raise the capacity, raise the reach of this board, and work effectively with other team members to achieve, hopefully, some very ambitious goals. So I like to think about this in terms of leadership and insight. So as you're spending some time with the charities that have joined us tonight, I'd like you to be thinking very carefully about whether there's a match with your personal interests and your skills. So I'll share a couple of vignettes from my life to give you a sense of what I've learned about leadership. You can take these as you will, but what I'm really hoping to achieve is to have you think a little bit about your personal history and how that history may tie in to your opportunities here tonight. So my first story starts off when I was just a little guy, about 11 years old, and I'm a big believer that the things you do when you're 10, 11, 12 years old are indicative of what you may be interested in the rest of your life. But when I was this little guy, and my son's about 11 years old now, I played hockey for a AAA team called Downsview. And I really worked hard to get to the AAA level. And when I joined this team, I discovered they were one of the worst teams in the AAA. Absolutely abysmal. I played about 30 games. We tied one, we lost the other 29. So I went crying to my father saying, this is the worst experience of my life and this is absolutely terrible. And he said, son, I'm going to give you some perspective. And I said, please. And he said, son, why did you take on this, this goalie role? And I said, I really love it. I want to become the best I can be. He said, well, think about the team that you've just joined. It's an absolutely dreadful team, and nobody expects to win. They also don't expect you to stop every shot. And one of your goals is to become a better goalie, so you're getting all this work. So why don't you just give yourself the permission to not be the greatest team in the league, but try and be the best goalie and just enjoy all the work that you're getting. So I thought my dad was right on the mark, and it stuck with me my whole life. If we can change our perspective on certain things, it can really help change our attitude towards them as well. The other item that will come up tonight for a lot of you is risk assessment. So I'll give you my little story of risk assessment. A couple of decades ago, I was traveling in Africa and doing some writing. And one of the articles I needed to write was taking me to southern Somalia. I was working in Kenya at the time. Both my wife and I hated flying. So we checked out taking a flight from Mombasa on the coast to southern Somalia. And it was about a 45-minute flight. It seemed pretty straightforward, but it was a tiny little plane and it made us extremely nervous. So we said, instead of taking the plane, we're going to take the bus, which was an incredibly bad decision. We clambered on the bus, which left 3 hours late, and then for a drive that's about from here to Kingston, it took us 14 hours. We were robbed on the bus. We were quite lucky because the bus previous to us had been hijacked. Anyhow, we finally got to this town, and we wrote the article that we were intending to write. And then we had to make the decision about how we're going to get back. And it was actually a very easy decision to hop on that flight after our bus experience. And afterwards we said, you know, we had no idea the risk that was involved taking the bus, but we had all these irrational fears about getting on this small airplane. And when we took the small airplane, it was a beautiful, smooth drive or flight. We had a beautiful chat with the pilot, all those types of things. So when I think about risk in my life, I really try and think, how can I get the facts as opposed to simply projecting out some of my innermost fears?